Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Chaz Licciardello.
This week, Kamala Harris takes the lead in several major polls and announces her running mate. It's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
We're going to go through a Democrat ticket's strengths and weaknesses with pollster Mark Penn, and we're also going to get to the bottom of this RFK and the bear story. But first...
And first, the Veep has her potential Veep.
Hi, this is Tim.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
I mean, I guess Tim knew what was coming next. It would have been kind of cruel to send a camera crew to his house just to capture the moment that Harris says, "Sorry, Tim, we've gone with Josh Shapiro."
Listen, I want you to do this with me. Let's do this together. Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored, Madam Vice President.
The joy that you're bringing back to the country.
And get it on the road, they did. First stop, Philadelphia, in the swing state of Pennsylvania.
And now, welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
So, here's what you should know about Tim Walz. He is the 60-year-old Democratic governor of Minnesota, one of the more progressive Midwestern states. Walz was born in Nebraska, became a high school teacher and a football coach in Minnesota, served in the National Guard, served in the US Congress, all before being elected governor in 2018. Politically, Walz has become more left-leaning over time. A moderate in Congress, he has a progressive record as governor with a free school meal program and abortion protections. Conservatives in particular don't like his mask mandates and school shutdowns during COVID, and they believe that he waited too long to activate the National Guard during riots following the killing of George Floyd in 2020. But in recent weeks, he's probably best known for calling out weirdness.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird. I see Donald Trump talking about the wonderful Hannibal Lecter or whatever weird thing he's on tonight. That is weird behavior.
And Donald Trump's response to Harris's VP choice was a little weird.
Thank you.
Harris's VP announcement comes after a rough couple of weeks for Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance, dogged by past statements about childless cat ladies having no stake in the future of the country and referring to Democrats as childless sociopaths who make America less mentally stable. Despite reports that Trump may be regretting picking Vance and speculation that he could be planning to dump him, Trump himself says VPs really don't matter that much.
Historically, the vice president in terms of the election does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact.
And based on history, that is actually a pretty reasonable assessment from Trump.
Yeah, even J.D. Vance agrees with him.
As much as this is a hit to my ego, people are going to vote primarily for Donald Trump or for Kamala Harris. Right. That's the way these things go.
All of that is probably true, although even if a VP may not help you win an election, a bad pick or just bad publicity around your choice can help you to lose an election. Just ask George McGovern and John McCain about that.
I think that's the whole point of Tim Walz, to be honest. He's a classic do no harm pick. The Democrat base probably going to love him. He might get a few hits off. He'll probably debate okay. But most importantly, he's unlikely to be a problem.
J.D. Vance!
Meanwhile, yesterday, Kamala Harris did formally secure the Democratic Party's presidential nomination with the finalisation of that virtual roll call of Democratic Party delegates. It was conducted ahead of their convention to make sure that they had access to the ballot in Ohio. So she becomes the first woman of colour to lead a major party ticket. It's a done deal. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has confirmed he will not attend the scheduled September 10th ABC News debate. He'd agreed to it when Joe Biden was his opponent. Instead, he's now challenging Vice President Harris to another debate, this one on Fox News on September the 4th, but with one major difference. Instead of the no audience rule from the first debate in June, this one would actually have
a full arena audience.
And Trump continued,
Kamala Harris doesn't have the mental capacity to do a real debate against me. I'll see her on September 4th, or I won't see her at all.
But, you know, Harris quickly made it pretty clear that she was going to stick with the original ABC News debate. So as of right now, there is no debate. And Trump's opinion of his opponent also spilled out into full view on Truth Social over the few hours that followed those tweets, calling Kamala Harris
really dumb
and repeatedly claiming that Harris has
extremely low IQ.
Okay, so what I think's happening there, John, is Trump, I think, is struggling to get the better of Harris's extremely aggressive online response team. When Trump announced that he was hoping for that debate you talked about before, Harris's team responded, "We're happy to discuss further debates after the debate both campaigns have already agreed to. Mr. Anytime, Anywhere, Anyplace should have no problem with that unless he's too scared to show up on the 10th. That is when Trump tried to taunt Harris as being too dumb to debate him on Fox. The problem for Trump, though, is that this standoff suits Harris fine. Firstly, she's starting to move ahead of Trump in the polls. She doesn't need a debate. Secondly, her attack makes a lot more sense than Trump's does. She's too dumb to debate him. That's an odd argument. Thirdly, Harris's team are really good sledgers. Like this one here. Trump then says, "I will debate you anytime, any place." Whereas Trump now says, "I will debate only if I can bring my blankie." I reckon Harris's team are loving this, John. And Trump is not used to getting treatment like this.
Yeah, they're having fun and he is not right now. But Trump targeting Harris's intelligence does represent something of a change in tactic after the backlash last week following these comments.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't.
And as journalist Rachel Scott correctly pointed out there, Kamala Harris has always identified as biracial, with an Indian mother and Jamaican father. Harris was a member of a black sorority at a traditionally black college, Howard. And as her official White House biography confirms, in 2021, Harris became the first woman, the first black American and first South Asian American to serve as vice president. Well, several named and unnamed Republicans told Axios this week that Trump's comments on her race were, quote, awful, unfortunate, frustrating and not a good idea. Republican Senate candidate and former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan took to X-Twitter to slam Trump, saying it is unacceptable and abhorrent to attack Vice President Harris or anyone's racial identity. The American people deserve better, he said. Knowingly or not, though, Hogan was echoing Harris's own earlier response.
It was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better.
Trying to paint Kamala Harris as an insincere shapeshifter on race may or may not ultimately be an effective attack. It does represent something of a return to the old Bertha playbook Trump used against Barack Obama. That did help to build Trump's political following at that time, but it did nothing to slow Obama's re-election in 2012.
Yeah, as you say, the attack's clearly not true. Back in 2020, a Trump campaign spokesperson actually pointed to previous political donations from Trump to Kamala Harris as proof that Trump wasn't racist. The spokesperson said at the time, "I'll note that Kamala Harris is a black woman and he donated to her campaign, so I hope we can squash this racism argument now." Sadly, we cannot. Also, way back in Harris's career, we're talking back in 2009, this is how she was introduced on the NBC Today Show.
Now to a woman named one of America's most powerful women by Newsweek magazine as San Francisco's first female African-American and Indian-American district attorney.
They used both races, and then they said this.
You have been called by some the female Barack Obama.
Oh, so was that back when Barack Obama was Indian? Trump is gaslighting people. The irony about this is that line about your background is something that Trump has done. In his book, The Art of the Deal, Trump hides his German heritage and writes that his grandfather came here from Sweden as a child. And as for Trump suddenly pretending that he was a Christian when he ran for the Republican nomination, the less said about that, the better.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal.
Sure, they're equal. But at least we now know why Trump launched this attack last week. He's trying to build the case that Harris is generally a phony. The next day he wrote, "Crazy Kamala is saying she's Indian, not black. This is a big deal. Stone cold phony. She uses everybody, including her racial identity." And then J.D. Vance got on board as well.
Kamala Harris is a phony who caters to whatever audience is in front of her. I don't know if you saw this, but earlier this week, look up the clip. She went down to Georgia and started talking with a fake Southern accent. I'm serious. Now, what the hell was that all about? Kamala Harris grew up in Canada.
Look, I don't know about this Southern accent thing. We did look up the clip. Vance was referring to this moment here from Harris's Atlanta rally.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
And look, there is a bit of a twang there, to be honest, but that's like 4 seconds in a 20-minute rally, and the rest of the rally sounded kind of normal. So if that's the most Southern you're going to get, you're not trying very hard. Either way, this phony attack seems to be the strategy they're going for, but once again, Harris's response team has the clapback. Donald, Kamala Harris is both black and Indian. You can be two things at once. Kind of like how you're both a rapist and a racist. And once again, John, Trump is not used to receiving this kind of treatment. I should also point out that 12% of Americans identify as multiracial, including 15% of African Americans and 25% of black Americans under 18. So add them up and all their families and all their friends. Trump's risking annoying a lot of people with this, John.
Yeah, he certainly is. And here is why Trump is so desperately flailing around trying to find a way to undermine Kamala Harris. He is suddenly in danger of losing an election that just 3 weeks ago was shaping up to be a Trump landslide. 13 weeks until Election Day this week, and it's pretty much on a knife edge in the average of national polls. Vice President Harris leads by 2 percentage points, and in the average of battleground state polls, things are pretty tight still. Trump is leading by 2 in Arizona, less than 1 point now in Georgia. In Nevada and North Carolina, there haven't been enough Trump-Harris head-to-head polls to generate a new average, but in last week's Morning Consult poll, which has a big sample size, it was even in Nevada and Trump led by 1 in North Carolina, while Harris has a slight lead in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So it is close, but on those numbers, Harris would have won if an election were held this week. But it is incredibly close. With 270 Electoral College votes needed to win, she would have had exactly 270 this week to Trump's 268. That assumes Harris gets the 1 Democrat leading district in Nebraska and Trump picks up the Republican district in Maine. That's how it all plays out. So it's close, Chaz.
It certainly is. Another benefit, though, for the Democrats in the last few weeks is a huge surge in enthusiasm.
Back in February, just 62% of Democrats said they were enthusiastic about voting for Joe Biden. Look at this now. Woof. Up to 88% now say that they are enthusiastic about voting for Kamala Harris. That is a huge jump. That is a 26-point jump. Look at Trump during the same stretch. Republicans for Trump. It was 80% in February. Look, it's still fairly high at 82%. But compared to February, where Trump had this 18-point advantage, now we see Harris with a 6-point advantage. It's definitely for Democrats. Game on.
Woof. Woof. Will it last, though? I don't know. But if it does, that is a huge asset for the Democrats. Mate.
Yeah, it's all about the vibes right now. The switch from Biden to Harris has also seen a huge reversal in fortunes on the fundraising front as well. Democrat donors gave their presidential campaign more than $310 million in the month of July alone, driven by a record-breaking $200 million in the first week after Biden dropped out. Trump's campaign also had one of their best ever fundraising months. They raked in $139 million following the debate, the attempted assassination, the Republican convention, having J.D. Vance named as his running mate. And so here we are heading into the final 3-month stretch of the campaign, and the money race is, like the polls, pretty tight. The vice president sitting on $377 million in the bank. Trump has $327 million.
Well, there's one thing we should mention. Kamala Harris still hasn't taken part in a single serious press conference or interview since she took over. JD Vance is getting a count going every single day on Twitter. I think he's up to day 17 now. She's going to need to address that soon, or it's going to become a thing.
Yeah, they're certainly trying to make it a thing, there's no doubt. Time to welcome our guest to Planet America. But Chaz, you're not going to be a part of this interview, so why don't you just have a little nap under the desk there? We'll call you when we're done. Joining us is one of the legends of Democratic politics, Mark Penn. He was President Bill Clinton's pollster in the 1990s. He was chief strategist for Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. These days, he's co-chair of the Harvard-Harris poll. And he was among those arguing really hard in recent days that Josh Shapiro should be Harris's vice presidential pick. So how's he feeling now? Mark Penn, welcome to Planet America.
Pleasure.
So what is your reaction to this slightly unexpected choice of VP?
Oh, I think clearly this is Bernie Sanders' choice. And she sat down and said, well, do I want to go to my convention with a split party, with a choice that might be controversial internally? They're going to play that all up, as opposed to, wow, I've really laid down a marker here. I'm a tough independent vice president. I'm not going to be beholden to the left as really Joe Biden was. Nope, she didn't do that. She instead went along with it, and people are puzzled. Most people are really puzzled as to why she didn't do this, and the Donald Trump camp is cheering.
And do you think that Tim Walz will be an effective attack dog against Donald Trump and JD Vance? He has been out there calling them weird a lot, and that has certainly seemed to stick.
Well, I don't think calling somebody weird is an accomplishment that puts you in the number 2 spot to being leader of the free world. You know, if that's what we've become in terms of campaigns, is a sad commentary. I think that that he may be a good vice president. He may have, you know, other qualifications we're going to learn about, but it does seem to me here that this choice was made a little bit more about party interests and on the basis of ideology. And look, you know, what's the upside? Could he play well with, you know, in a counter to JD Vance, that he might play well with the same kind of voters that JD Vance was going for? And I mean, what I think he does assure is a very united convention. They're not going to have the kind of division that they might have had with Shapiro, but then there was huge benefit in that division, because if she doesn't stand up and she limits her campaign to more of the progressive left, then that's not necessarily as winning a position as reaching out and bringing moderates in.
I suppose in his favour you could say that Tim Walz looks an awful lot like the kind of voter that Kamala Harris will need to support her in places like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Do you think that those appearances alone will be an asset to him?
I don't think his appearance is going to help any more than calling somebody weird is going to help. I mean, people are going to look at his record. Look, he is unknown by the American public. His name recognition close to zero outside of his own state. And is he well known in the Midwest? I doubt it. Not even that well known in the Midwest. So he's a blank slate. And so I think that the Harris campaign is going to show him as a reformer who understands the working class. And the Trump campaign is going to paint him, or try to paint him, as an extremist. I think in this case, the mainstream media, which might have just kind of bolstered whoever the choice was, I think is raising some questions about why Shapiro wasn't picked. And of course, some people are saying anti-Semitism was at work.
So, with 3 months to go until this election, with the 2 major party tickets now finalised, where do you think this election is up to?
Well, first you have to remember that vice presidents at the end of the day don't matter much unless they're disasters. I think that to the extent that Donald Trump chose someone more of a base politician and she chose someone more of a base politician, I think vice presidents are really sort of canceled out. It's a race that still can be decided either way. You know, I think Harris has made a good, entry into the race. Her favorables in my poll have gone up from 38 to like 47. So what people have seen, they have liked. And that's what makes this a race that's too early to call.
Mark Penn, great to get your insights. Thank you very much for joining us on Planet America.
Thank you.
Landing a man.
When President Joe Biden announced he would not seek re-election in 2024, he became the first president since Rutherford B. Hayes in 1881 to step aside after serving just one 4-year term in office. Two other 19th century presidents also retired after a single term, the ailing James Polk in 1849 and the failing James Buchanan in 1861. 4 presidents in the 20th century came to office after the death of their successors and completed a partial term followed by one 4-year term of their own. Theodore Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, Harry Truman and Lyndon Johnson. So, in one way or another, 7 presidents have passed the torch instead of standing in the next election. But it is not always a winning strategy for the incumbent party. Polk was a Democrat, but he was succeeded by Zachary Taylor of the Whig Party, a forerunner of the Republicans. Buchanan was also a Democrat. He was also replaced by the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln. Hayes was a Republican and he did manage to pass the torch to another Republican, James Garfield. And 2 early 20th century Republicans managed to keep the presidency in their party. Roosevelt in 1909 was succeeded by William Howard Taft, and Calvin Coolidge in 1929 was followed into the White House by Herbert Hoover. But that is where the run of luck ends. When Truman stepped aside in 1952, his Democratic successor, Adlai Stevenson, lost in a landslide to Dwight Eisenhower and lost again 4 years later. And when another Democrat, Lyndon Johnson, made way for his Vice President, Hubert Humphrey, in 1968, Republican Richard Nixon won the presidency. And nobody has tried to pass the torch again for more than half a century until now. We'll soon see how that works out. We're back on.
Okay, fine.
President Biden and Vice President Harris were on hand at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland this week to welcome home a group of wrongfully detained Americans from Russia, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovitch.
We just saw Evan Gershkovitch hug Kamala Harris, shaking the president's hand, giving him an embrace as well.
Also released former US Marine Paul Whelan, who served 6 years in a Russian prison after being convicted of spying. America said that he was wrongfully detained. He was just there for a wedding. In total, 24 prisoners were swapped, some spies, at least one Russian assassin, several dissidents and some journalists as well. It was the largest, most complex prisoner exchange since the Cold War and seen by many as a diplomatic win for President Biden.
This is an incredible relief for all the family members gathered here. It's a relief to the friends and colleagues all across the country who've been praying for this day for a long time.
Yeah, it certainly was complicated. Not only did Germany release Russians, but so did Poland, Slovenia and Norway. And then they had to get Turkey involved as well to provide the neutral turf for the prisoner exchange. One thing I really liked about it as well, it wasn't just about trading for Americans. I mean, yeah, they did get 3 Americans out, but as you indicated, the deal also released Russian political prisoners, Russians who had stood up for democracy and been thrown in prison for it. Biden said, we stand for freedom, not just for our own people, but for others as well. I was quite surprised by that, but I'm pleased that everyone got on board.
Yeah, well, not everyone got on board because former President Trump did give his congratulations to Vladimir Putin.
I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made yet another great deal. Did you see the deal we made? Now, look, we want to get people in. You know, we got 59 hostages. I never paid anything.
Important to remember, though, in all of this, originally a part of this proposed deal was Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in unexplained circumstances in a Russian prison back in February.
Yeah, I think Trump, when he was going on about that, might have been a bit miffed because he very prominently bet against this deal back in May. He wrote then that Evan Gershkovitch would be released almost immediately after the election and that Vladimir Putin would do that for Trump. but not for anyone else, and that America would be paying nothing. And obviously Trump bet wrong, although having said that, they didn't get the prisoners for free this time, did they? So Biden was asked about that afterwards.
President Trump has said repeatedly that he could have gotten the hostages out without giving anything in exchange. What do you say to that? What do you say to President Trump now, former president?
Why didn't he do it when he was president?
Biden was pretty happy with himself there, although he seemed not to realise that 2 of the 3 American prisoners were captured during the Biden administration.
Details.
Meanwhile, J.D. Vance fulfilled his role of stretching incredibly hard to make Trump feel good about himself by asking, why are the prisoners coming home? It's because bad guys all over the world recognise Donald Trump's about to be back in office, so they're cleaning house. Poor guy's having to work super hard to make up for all that childless cat lady stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, he's trying.
One more thing, though. We probably should acknowledge that even with this successful trade, there are still more Americans left in Russian jails waiting for their chance to be traded out. Mark Fogel, a teacher, Ksenia Karolina, a ballerina. In particular, those 2 are getting a lot of attention. And so the cycle continues. Westerners really need to stop going to Russia.
Yeah, the Hermitage can wait a little, I think.
Yeah, anyway. Now to a decade-old cold case that's finally been solved. The mystery of the dead bear that was dumped near a bike path in Central Park.
A bear cub is discovered dead in, of all places, Central Park, an apparent case of animal cruelty.
Adding to the mystery, Slatkin says the baby bear was lying on top of this bicycle.
That's horrible. It's very bizarre.
To think that somebody with criminal intents would do such a thing right here in our backyard is disturbing.
Yeah, what kind of depraved lowlife would dump a dead bear cub that can apparently ride a bike in Central Park? If you guessed presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., congratulations.
I was taking a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, and that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea.
Great idea to skin and eat the roadkill and then just dump it in Central Park as a prank of some kind. They also apparently thought it was a great idea to take a posed photo of RFK Jr. with the dead bear cub, acting like the dead bear was biting his hand. Good thinking, guys. You might be wondering why RFK Jr. would admit to this in an election campaign. He was apparently trying to get out in front of a New Yorker story, much like a bear might try to get out in front of a moving van. Kennedy wrote, "Looking forward to seeing how you spin this one, New Yorker." I imagine the words "Kennedy confirmed everything" would feature in that story. Jeez, who would have thought the weirdest RFK story of this campaign was not going to be RFK Jr. once lived with an emu who regularly attacked his wife. Now he just has pet ravens he feeds meat scraps and yells "caw" to. Yet here we are. It's just the latest episode of my new favourite show.
I would totally watch that. Totally watch that. That's it for another trip to Planet America. A lot to chat about by the fireside this Friday night on ABC News, 8 p.m. Eastern or any time after that on iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And Planet America is back at the same time next Wednesday night on ABC and also online. See you there. Bye.